at all. What is money? They want to answer that it's effectively that it's immutable tokens of value, that it represents value. But of course, they know that it's changed all the time. They may not know why or how under this obfuscation explicitly as would allow us to resolve this or to identify a fact of singular solution as we are here. But nonetheless, we've just expressed their desires here. B. Singular solution of systemic manipulation of the cost or value of money or property. Systemic manipulation of the cost or value of money or property is solved only by the separate or integral combination of our first and third solutions, because the only powers of a faulty currency to impose volumetric or dispositional improprieties are dissolved by either our first or third solutions or the combination thereof. C. Singular solution of inherent, irreversible, and therefore terminal multiplication of falsified indebtedness by purported interest. Inherent, irreversible, and therefore terminal multiplication of falsified indebtedness by interest is obviously solved only by an eradication of interest. For interest is even its sole prospective cause. But contrary to the felonious proposition that somehow no one would ever have lent us money if the present obfuscation were not subject to interest, maldisposition and inherent terminal failure are nonetheless justifiably resolved by eradicating interest. Because in only falsifying debts to itself, the purported banking system never gives up lawful consideration commensurable to the purported debts it unjustifiably launders into its possession in its purported creation of money. On the contrary, the purported banking system no more than publishes further representations of our very own promissory obligations to each other. And thus, our promissory obligations are still inherently only commitments to retire principal at no less than the rate of consumption or depreciation of the related property. No real property of the purported banking system is even at stake to claim risk justifies interest, and particularly then as no need to purportedly borrow money exists where rights to issue unexploited enforceable promissory obligations are restored to the people. Therefore, no actual concern whatever can possibly justify interest. In any respect to lawful consideration, then, it is impossible for either the principal or interest of the present obfuscation even to become rightful properties or claims of purported banks, because nothing equivalent to the principal was ever given up, because principal is only rightly retired, because no concern at all justifies interest, and because no justifiable means exists, therefore, to ever convey either the principal or the interest to the possession of these unwarranted obfuscators of our currency. We do not, in fact, therefore, ever borrow money from banks. For at its very creation, even the subject obfuscation cannot even exist to be borrowed. For on the contrary, purported banking systems merely publish evidence of our own promissory obligations to each other, ever unjustifiably intervening upon our affairs, therefore, to impose terminal dispossession. D. Conclusive fact of singular integral solution. Nothing but an eradication of interest and a restoration of the individual right to issue promissory obligations, free of extrinsic manipulation, adulteration, or exploitation of their inherent commitments, or the natural opportunity to make good on them, therefore comprises a mathematically perfected economy, which therefore not only accomplishes these purposes virtually without cost, but even without regulation. Section 7.3. Lawful authority to monetize through a common monetary foundry, or CMF. The only lawful authority to uniformly execute our enforceable monetization of our own production, according to these necessary standards, therefore, shall be a common monetary foundry, which shall comprise a vital branch of representative government, which shall be subject to all insurances, prescribed processes, and criminal penalties necessary to a fact of absolute consensual representation, which shall abide strictly by the fundamental principles of mathematically perfected economy, the duties of which, in every reasonable case, shall extend every practical benefit of automation, and which duties, therefore, shall strictly be: A. To certify creditworthiness for a proprietary determinate lifespan of related property according to agreed legitimate standards, where for the sake of determining rate of payment over a justified integral lifespan, the proprietary determinate lifespan of the related property shall be a period over which a property must be considered to be consumed by facts commencing at a moment of initial consumption and ending when either A. The property is delivered to further parties, assuming a new promissory obligation which essentially ends the applicable period of the preceding promissory obligation. B. Or ending when the property endures to a further point, short of the potential longevity of the property itself, but beyond which the property cannot be expected to be consumed either by the obligated party or further obligated parties. C. Or ending at a point determined by the actual lifespan of a property, which by virtue of both conducive rates of depreciation or consumption or payment, and perpetual desirability of the property over its actual lifespan, a promissory obligation can be expected to be sustained by further parties willing to assume the remaining obligation across the whole natural lifespan of the property. If I may break in here, the call for this seemingly complicated wording stems from the possibility that you might build a house which no person in eternity would ever want to take over after you'd created it, and you won't live long enough to consume it over its lifespan. How do we justly deal with this? These definitions here provide for whichever of these three options is the proper course for resolving those issues by this explicit wording. So this is the reason for the structure and expressions that we've just read. So 2 is the proprietary determinate lifespan, therefore, is the minimum of these prospectively applicable lifespans, because neither the integrity of the currency nor the integrity of promissory obligations can be maintained unless fulfillment is ensured, that payment retires the respective circulation according to responsibility for consuming the property across the determinate lifespan. So effectively, we've even inherently defined proprietary determinate lifespan here because it's decided by this convolution of contingent factors. B. Uniform issuance of certified promissory obligations on the behalf of obligors. We're continuing with the obligations of this common monetary founding. So this second obligation, or B, is to issue qualified promissory notes or currency to creditors upon performance of the obligations of the creditor. C. Automated maintenance of the accounts of the people, a further obligation of the CMF, is to maintain the accounts of the people, which basically streamlines many of the responsibilities that we have today, in that our payments for our bills are automatically deducted from our accounts and applied to the proper accounts. This common monetary foundry just takes over all of that and eliminates these burdens from our lives. So C, or its third obligation, or automatic maintenance of the accounts of the people, in which to maintain the accounts of the people, and in so doing to apply the most appropriate of an agreed development of classes of depreciation to respective classes of property and consumption. So we're going to prescribe a default means of determining a de-escalation of depreciation over the lifespan of a property, so its remaining value reflects our general perception of remaining value, and then having this to immediately implement mathematically perfected economy. Should we want to revise this for different classes of property or exceptions, however any country decides it will, of course, that is entirely authorized by these provisions. But what we're doing here by establishing a default method of determining de-escalation of rates of consumption or depreciation is we're providing a way to immediately adopt mathematically perfected economy, to pay and process our accounts, or our costs, in other words, accordingly for the while, until we decide, well, we would like to refine this or apply a different rate or whatever. So we define this de-escalated rates of depreciation as: 1, to distribute payment of 35.5% of the principal evenly over the first 12.5% of the proprietary lifespan. 2, in equal increments, to thereafter have paid a remainder to 58% of the principal at conclusion of 25% of the proprietary lifespan. And this basically it takes our $100,000 home with a 100-year lifespan, and it escalates the cost of a new home to approximately $250 per month over the first 12 and a half years of the 100-year lifespan. Over the next 12 and a half years, you pay up to 58% of the home. The next quarter of its lifespan, we pay what amounts to the linear rate, and in the end of the lifespan, we're practically paying negligible costs of the home. But to continue then, 3, in equal increments thereafter, to have paid a remainder of 83% of the principal at conclusion of 50% of the proprietary lifespan. So you can see we're only going to pay 17% of the remaining value of the home, or over the last 50% of its lifespan. In equal increments thereafter, to have paid a remainder of 95.5% of the principal at conclusion of 75% of the proprietary determinant lifespan. So we're going to be paying only 4.5% of the remaining value of the home, or of the original value of the home rather, over the remainder of its lifespan. In equal increments, to thereafter have paid a remainder of 98.63% of the principal at 85.5% of the proprietary determinant lifespan. And in equal increments, to thereafter have paid a remainder to 100% of the principal at conclusion of the projected proprietary determinant lifespan of the respective property. So the reason for all this is to make new property enough more expensive to consume over its initial phases of its lifespan, and less over its remaining phases of lifespan, as to be conducive to utilizing the entire lifespan of all property, which is economic. So in fact, our newlywed couple might buy the $100,000 home in the later stages of its lifespan for $10 a month. 2, Equity shall be monetizable, and in its monetizability shall comprise